Hello and welcome to Mirror Realm. My name's Nick, known as Wyvern on the Discord servers. This is the third episode in our limited play series. We're looking to release 2 episodes in this series each week until we eventually complete it, and we're anticipating that will be a bit of a while yet, as we're thinking it's going to end up running for around 20 episodes or so in total. So if you like this series and you want to be notified when new episodes are released, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. With that said, let's dive into it. In this episode, we'll be discussing and analysing the ordinary water spellbook cards in the Arthurian Legend set. Finwife?
Real bad.
Yeah.
So it's sort of that same category as Scout.
I think one thing that makes it particularly bad is just everyone's just playing, like, there's not a lot of prospect with just how the games play out that you're ever going to get the mana out of it. That's the thing.
So just thinking about it now, I think we might hate on this a little bit too much. Because we basically never play it, and it's unplayable, right? But it's basically Scout with Submerge for most of the game. So most of the time it's better than Scout.
Yeah.
So maybe we hate on it a little bit too much. But I'm never happy if it's in my deck. With that said.
I think it is better than Scout, but I wouldn't ever be happy about playing Scout. That's the thing. So
yeah, so I think
and I'd still rather play the off-coloured families, the off-element families.
But there's also the fact that Finwife is just a 2-power Submerge, and then there's Shellycoat, right? Which is just S tier compared to Finwife. Yeah. Like, it's just Finwife with and
I suppose we say the thing is that, like, in a way, the opponent is forced to basically kill it because, like, there is, I don't know, forced to, but quite often your opponent would not be very comfortable with the idea of you getting 2 extra mana every turn. So,
I mean, there is the world where you're on the play, you play it up front, and they miss their 2-drop, right?
Yeah.
But they still don't want to let you have the site in front of them, so they just... I mean,
yeah, the more we talk about this, the more it's like, maybe this should have been indexed a little bit more. Like, it's clearly better than this.
Will's been onto it, and we just didn't know.
It's clearly better than the Saracen Scout. Like, that's obvious.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's definitely
but
better.
it's also not better enough that it goes up in value. I think it's probably the same value as that one, but... Actually, no, I think maybe it actually gets brought down below Saracen Scout for the fact that Shellycoat exists.
Possibly. Yeah, I mean...
Because Fire has no other 2-drop, right?
Yeah.
Apart from the family. So it's like, you're not really fighting with anything else on the same spot of the curve. Whereas Shellycoat is potentially the best 2-drop ordinary out of every element.
Oh, 4/4/4? I'm not going to make it worse. I think it's better. Like, yeah. I know what you're saying, but...
Yeah, maybe we need to bring down Scout retroactively. But maybe it's not better. Maybe it's not better, and maybe it just is the same as Scout. Maybe they're.
I don't think that. I mean, I think they're perfectly. Like, honestly, like, the idea that the Scout ends up in the deck or the Finwife, like, it could totally happen in our decks as the last playable. Yeah. Like, totally. Whereas some of these other cards, like Wall of Brambles or something, like, or Tax Collector or whatever.
Wall of Brambles at 0 across the board.
Exactly.
So.
But yeah. Let's give another example. Like, do we have any? Like, no.
I suppose no. So we've got Field Labourers at 4, right?
I mean, I definitely would play the Finwife typically, right? I mean, it's hard to say because they're different elements and whatever, but the Grain Sparrow is worse for sure.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
I think I'm not...
Maybe they are 4s.
Yeah.
Because they're not unplayable, right?
Fisherman's Family, great. Are we just saying it's the same? Is there any reason why it's not the same?
No.
5/5/6?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason why. I mean, Mesmerism exists, maybe. But I think the Fire unique at 3 are probably still better. I think the Fire one is potentially the best one. Maybe the Air's the best one because Air ends up being the splash most of the time, but I think they're all the same across the board, realistically.
I agree with the Air one, though. The Air one does end up as a splash more often, and then maybe that does. Yeah,
I don't think it pushes it up though, but mainly because of the reason that the water, the fire, and the earth one, they all have really good cards they're trying to get their second threshold for. Like in the brown bears, the swindler troop that's coming up, and fire has a lot of them. Like they have 3 really good second double fire thresholds at ordinary. So
yeah,
I think that's probably evens it out overall.
All right.
Yeah.
Grievous Insult.
I think this card is fine, and would end up in my deck more often than Finwife because it draws a spell. Right? It cycles. It's not the best trick, but the silence and tap certainly can be a very relevant trick to try and make sure you get like either a good trade or like hit down curve for a straight up kill, so that it can't be double blocked. Things like that. There's some things like leprechauns that, have death rights that you want to stop, so it stops all of those. It stops the lethals, things like that. It's potentially good stopping, like making sure Shelly Coat dies. There's enough cases where I think you're not upset if it's in your deck, but it's in that like 23rd, 24th playable sort of slot where it can be cut pretty easily.
Yeah. And yeah, importantly, I think it's less about the trick itself and it's more about the fact that it draws a spell, right? So straight away the floor is boosted massively once it doesn't cost you a card.
Yeah. And the fact that it can be cast by an ally makes it so that the nearby is pretty often, like, you're very rarely gonna not be able to do it.
Yeah, especially in limited. Like,
yeah.
Is it 5?
I mean, interestingly, I would always put it in my deck over a Finwife, unless I had no other 2-drop minions, realistically. But I don't know if it's enough better that it goes up a point. Like, I don't think it's a 5. Like, it's definitely not as good as Families.
Is it 4/4/5?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, because when you get the trick and draw a card, it's good, right? It is actually a solid card in that situation. So yeah, it is a bit better than a 4.
A helpful hob.
I don't know. I want this card to be good, and there's very fringe scenarios where it can be good, but generally it's just not worth playing. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it does have...
It's really expensive.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're better off with a Squire for the Lance as a trick. There's sometimes where... I mean, most of the time, you're just going to be untapping to potentially get in for damage, because it doesn't really play like a trick very well, because if you hit a minion... untap that minion to kill another minion, you're probably going to have enough damage on you for your minion to die, so that in that scenario it doesn't feel good.
So yeah, save for a lance token. If
but then basically if you have a lance token, you're using 2 tricks to get
right? It's a bit. I mean, one thing I would say about this is that you have the ultimate worst case scenario is that you can still untap your avatar. So
yeah,
so that brings the floor up a little bit.
But untapping your avatar in pure AL draft is pretty mediocre. So basically, it's a land surveyor that has the option to tap player side instead at 4.
Yeah. Well, no, as a worst case scenario, right? Like,
yeah.
Best case scenario is obviously it can. Well, I mean, I guess like the more practical scenario, I suppose, is that you're. I mean, your brown bears, let's say for argument's sakes, can basically move and then you untap it and then it can punch something, right? That your opponent didn't play right next to it because they didn't want you to kill it. So
it's a really bad blink in that situation.
Yeah. So, like, but the blink isn't in the set. Yeah, but it's yes. Yeah. I'm just saying...
in that situation, isn't Leader Stray just better?
It's... maybe, but it doesn't have the other worst... Like... In that situation, yeah. But I'm just saying, the thing with Helpful Hob is that the floor is... Like I'm saying, worst case scenario, nothing is going on and you can still untap your avatar with it.
Yeah.
Right, so... And that's ramping to... Potentially going from 4 to you play it as your 4 drop, and then you get potentially you could ramp into some important 6 drop on 1 turn early.
So it's worse than Field Labourers.
Yeah, but the thing is, but it's more versatile than all these other cards, right? Because it's... I'm not saying it's good, by the way. I'm just saying...
Yeah, I didn't think you were saying it's good.
I'm not saying it's good, but I'm just saying, okay... So yes, but what Field Labourers can't do is make your brown bears move 2 spots to kill something, right? Or to kill something and smack them for 4, or to... Like, it's got some versatility, right? Unlike these other cards. Is that versatility worth 4 mana? Probably. Like, no, it's bad, but the question is really just... Where in the bad scale does this ultimately fit? I would rather play a Grievous Insult.
Yep.
Right.
I would rather play every water card except for Thieving Magpie, I think.
Yeah.
Would I rather play Led Astray? That's the question. Because that's a card that never makes my deck. But I do think it's not unplayable.
And I think, well, it depends, right? So if you had...
There's also the scenario where... you just don't have any good minions you want to untap.
Exactly.
That really synergize with it, right? So
then Led Astray becomes pretty bad as well, though, I think.
Yep.
I think the main... I mean, you're not happy if you play on either of those cards in your deck, but potentially you may have to play one, right? So
I mean, the thing about Led Astray is it's potentially better for killing someone on Death's Door because you're moving them out of position to be able to get their blocks in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Hob doesn't really do that.
Yep, so then you're going to have a bunch of other questions, like do you have a bunch of other good ways to kill them when they're on Death's Door anyway or not? Or are you really lacking? Then Led Astray gets better. But, well, I mean, I definitely would rather play this in a bunch of those Earth cards that we were talking about.
Yep.
I get that they're a different element, but the thing is, you just...
But I think in the same vein, we were saying... They're unplayable because you end up with enough playables almost always that you just don't need to play them. I think this guy's in the same boat.
Possibly. Yeah, I know I'm denied about between him and a bunch of other bad options before. And
Oh, I know I have too. And so Led Astray, Grievous Insult, Finwife, I think they're all in the same boat as this guy. But I think they're all... I mean, Insult and Finwife are both probably a bit better. Unless you have, like, some really sick Sir or something.
Yeah, then he potentially...
with Hob, then he gets a bit more value. But if we're just talking, like, synergy with Ordinaries and stuff like that, I think he falls off more than the other ones. Maybe he's better than Led Astray because of the flexibility.
Yeah, so that's where I was going before. I think so, but again, that's also dependent on... stuff like, I don't know, it's a very specific deck you're going to include him in, pretty much. You're never going to include him unless you got some ally you want to untap. The very specific ally you want to untap, and you also that's for sure.
Maybe if you drafted a witch you'd play him.
Yep.
But even then, Witch's abilities aren't good enough. I was just thinking of what avatars you could draft, because he does nothing with Archmage. He does nothing with...
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of drafts now, and we've never seen a Witch yet, I'm pretty sure.
We haven't drafted one, but there's definitely been a couple opened over the...
Oh, has there? Why the hell would people not play it? Okay, people have chosen... Nobody's played one.
Lachlan opened one, maybe two?
No, I know he opened a Templar.
I know he opened a Witch as well.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe he brings it from home. So yeah, I think overall...
I mean, we could check. There's certainly going to be some unique minions that this is going to matter for, especially a lot of those unique Sirs. Like, there's stuff that's going to be relevant. Or even just like those... Anything this massive, right? Like, once you're talking about I know what you're saying. Your brown bears can't attack twice, but there's other stuff that can, right? If it's 6 power, it can, type of thing. So I'm thinking a very specific deck, but it's All right, let's just try and rate it. So it's definitely... All right, let's go from the bottom. It's definitely better than Wall of Brambles, that kind of thing. It's better than all this stuff that's all zeros.
I don't think it's a 1. I think it is... Because it can be in your deck, right? So it's got to be a 2, right? Like, it's not the worst thing. It's word game...
I mean, is it 2/2/4?
Yeah, I think it's something like that. Because the bad game is just untapping your avatar, right? And getting a 1 power blocker out of it.
Yeah, which is a hell of a lot better than like not being able to rescue anything. For example, as a bad game, like it's got a pretty good worst case scenario. Is what I'm saying. Compared to a lot of these other cards, they don't do anything. It still does something.
Yeah, maybe rescue is too high.
Maybe.
Because if its worst case scenario is you can't get anything back, then it's...
Well, of course it is. It's always going to be the worst case scenario. But so that would... But in limited, well, it's not that you can't get anything back. You can't get anything back that you would want to get back. Something like that. But, I don't know. I think rescue's fair. I think it's worse than rescue. I think this is fair. 2/3/5, 2/2/4. There's definitely like...
I mean, I'm not going to argue it. Like, I don't think it's enough to warrant arguing out of this. So, because I even if it is, it's like it's a plus or minus 1 on like bad game and average game probably, which is it's okay, but it's not like something you're very happy to have in your deck outside of very fringe scenarios. And the same can be said in Wife, Grievous Assault, Led Astray.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, part of this exercise is just to set a baseline, so when we get our seal pool and there's a helpful hob, we can then talk about how all these numbers shift up and down because of the other cards in the pool, right? So this is kind of... it's very theoretical what we're doing, but this is how we think, though, right? Well, we think... This is why I've decided to do it this way, because this is how we conceptualize cards, and it's way more complicated than what we're doing here, but... You have to manifest it into something tangible to be able to discuss. That's the thing.
Yeah, like our discussions about these cards, if we weren't trying to shorten it down for make it a 3 or a 4 hour video, we go rabbit hole like for much longer. It could be a 4x video if we actually went all the way down the rabbit hole on each card.
And when we are talking about like good game, is like we're saying it's the 25th best game out of 100. But thing is, if you have a card that just instantly wins any game you play it 5 out of 100 times, and that matters a lot, right? And we're not really covering that. I'm not sure there are any ordinary cards that fall into that bucket too much, by the way.
I think, like, maybe, Pelennor would probably fall into that. He's the 5/3 charge one, right? I could see the fact that he can, like, run a game, and if you get to potentially kill a 2-power minion and keep him alive and draw another card and potentially do a bunch of stuff like that, he's probably one of the better minions to untap. Just... without looking at any lists or anything, that's just like one card that popped into mind.
But I mean,
he's pretty good in a he's really bad with a Reader deck because Reader's the only one you can untap because Reader even stops that untap, right?
Yeah. Yep. But that's the dream in the end, right? It's just cards that have high bad game, high average game, high good game, and also single handedly win games all by themselves sometimes. Like that's the dream, right? That's Reader, by the way, in certain constructed decks. Right? Yes. So, okay. So, and probably in limited as well, actually. Right? Just high bad, high average, high good. Also, just wins by itself.
Yep.
Pretty much. So, like that, they're the cards that they're the dream cards but there's only Okay, moving on. Like, how do you even say this? Is it Afank? Afank? How would you say it?
I'm not sure. Probably Afank? I don't know.
Or is it French somehow?
It's probably not even from English, right? It's probably some other language.
Is it an S sound, that one? This is C and S sound? Afance?
Maybe. Don't know.
Right. We're going to call it Afank. Sounds horrible, but I guess it looks pretty horrible, so works.
Call him old Lakey boy.
Yeah. This is one, for me anyway, that I have definitely cooled off a little bit on this over time. I'm not saying it's bad, by the way. It's a little bit like the Vikings for you, I think. Something that I think I maybe overrated a little bit too much to begin with, and I think mostly that's
it was in a lot of your decks early on.
Yeah.
And maybe a lot of them. I think it's completely playable. But yeah, I do think it's like... I think it's one of the... It falls into that category of you're never upset if it's in your deck, and if you draft it, it's probably never getting cut. Because it's definitely stronger than all of those like cards we put in like the 23rd, 24th sort of bracket. But it's not like it's a brown bears. It's not going to run a game, but it's going to answer something that runs the game most of the time. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's the reason why where it ultimately ended up for me is just because normally, right, like your good scenario for this is that it's trading out for a brown bears, right? Basically, right. In what we're talking about in the 25th best game out of 100, that's what it's doing, right? It's trading out for something with 4 power, but that costs 4 probably, and this costs 4 anyway, right? So, whereas potentially they're also just killing it with a Lance token on a 2 power thing, for nothing, or it's trading out for a 3 power thing that costs 3. So it's like,
I think a lot of the time, if you're worried about that sort of stuff, you can sort of play it submerged anyway, and you're probably just like keeping it safe and sort of stopping them from attacking unless they have the trick in play. And then if they play the Lance to have the trick in play, it's sort of like you know the answer already and you can just play around it. But it is a card, if you play it submerged, you're just getting no pressure out of it at all. But that can be okay. It's better than losing it to a Lance token.
Yeah, so one that's already on the board.
It sort of has those options where, like... I mean, it's clearly worse than Pufferfish from Beta, and it sort of plays a similar role if you're playing it in that, like, defensive position.
Yeah.
But it is also pretty good at attacking if their answer is 2 2-power minions, which is good against all the other 3-power threats, but this gets to deal... Like, this still gets a 2-for-1, whereas none of the others would, so... It's sort of like raises it just a little bit, but not by heaps.
And then the other thing, I think one of the issues is it's just because of the cards in the set mostly, right? Like it's pretty easy to deal with ultimately is the thing. So if there is a game where they've got something that's really big and nasty, and this is keeping it in check, they probably can just kill it somehow.
I mean, a lot of the removal for it, though, is like... A lot of their common removal doesn't deal with it very well. Like, Joust and Jewel don't deal with this at all.
No, Missiles
they just one themselves with it. What was that?
Missiles just kills it. They can just throw some crappy thing at it.
Like Burning Hands doesn't...
Well, it
Missiles
does in
is like the only one, right?
It does in combination, right? Burning Hands and then Fly Robin over it or whatever. It's... Or just throw a minion. Like, I'm not saying like that. All I'm saying is that if it actually is a real problem, because they've got a Wyvern or something, right? Like, they can just 2-for-1 themselves to get rid of it and then win. Like, I'm just saying if it really actually ever is a real problem because they've got one of them 6-powered 7-cost things or like. If you're ever going to get amazing value out of it, probably they can deal with it one way or another. It may not be an efficient way to deal with it, but they can probably do it to not lose their 6-powered minion, right?
Yeah.
So all I'm really trying to say is that it's rarely amazing. This is the thing, right?
Oh, I'm not trying to argue with it. It is. I'm just saying it's like...
In practice, it's just rarely amazing.
Of the slightly underpowered for their cost things, it's not the worst.
And it's still really important, though, that, like I'm saying, like dealing with the brown bears that you otherwise can't really deal with very well is pretty good still.
Yep.
Right, I think we've just about said what there is to say. We just got to rate it. I mean, it certainly feels better than every other... Like, I don't know. It feels pretty solid. This is the thing. It feels pretty flat.
Yeah. It feels like its bad game is about the same as its average game.
Is it 6, 6, 7?
Nah, I don't think it's that high. I was thinking 5s. Maybe it's 5, 6, 7. maybe it's 5.56, 5.57. I don't think it. I don't know. I'm not passionate enough about it to argue it, so I think if you want it to be...
Well, I'm trying to work out. I mean, clearly...
I mean, it's not as good as Leprechaun, right? And that's at a 6.
Well, so that's a bit different. A Fank is way better late game, though. Well, we're saying Leprechaun is bad late game. That's why we pulled it down a bit.
Yeah,
but a Fank is still solid late game.
Yeah, it's also worse early, I guess.
I think what did I say? 6.67.
Yeah,
that's where I'm. Yeah, it's certainly. I think its bad game is probably better than Leprechaun, but I wouldn't be bad. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it is. Feels really weird putting it that high when it's...
Maybe not. No, I don't think so. We're basically saying if you have it, it's an auto include.
Yeah.
So, like Reckless Squire is not an auto include. I've definitely left them out before.
Yeah. Yep. Same.
Right. So, I wouldn't leave a Vikings out. What else have we got around here? I probably wouldn't leave a Lumbering Giant out either.
I have done that, but my deck was bonkers.
I think it's fine. But anything that's rated similar is... Yeah, I think it's...
Yeah, okay.
It's very solid. I'm just saying, I thought it was really... I just overrated it, right? I put it more in the bracket of like Vikings, and it's not in that bracket.
Yeah, okay.
Basically, right? So... and it's pretty much an auto include. I'm pretty sure if you have it.
But it's less of like if it's an auto include versus like we're talking about drafting it, right? Like,
yep, yeah, exactly. Yep,
like you'd never really consider it as a high pick.
No, but I can see a world where you would take it over a Fisherman's Family. Still, it's going to depend on stuff.
Maybe
you would take Fisherman's Family before it? First pick?
I think first pick I would just for the not committing to an element. But power level wise, the Afnak's probably better.
Yeah. And that's what we're rating. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What I'm happy about. Maybe. I mean, it definitely feels like there's no way that you can rate its bad game lower than Leprechaun. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So... then we're basically saying its average game, ironically, is right on par with nothing. It's the only 6. But it's not as good as Vikings. It's not as good as Lumbering Giant, Harassing Ruffians, Burning Hands. I think that's all true. Yeah?
Yeah.
And its average game, we're saying, is better than the Families.
Better than the Families and the Squire.
I think that's true. And then we're saying it's good game. It's whatever. It's better than.
I don't know if its average game is particularly better than a Squire. Maybe it is. I think they're roughly on par, but not so much that I would want to change it.
Yeah. And then what are we saying? Like it's not as good as good games. Not as good as Vikings, Giant, Joust, Burning Hand. I think that's all true, but it is better than Field Labourers. For sure. This feels overrated now.
Well, no, because its good games are really good, right? So
yeah, we're saying it's 25th best game, but yeah, anyways, right? We're not going to change it. So
yeah, I think that comes up enough that it's worth being where it is. Whereas, like, because the thing with the Field Labourers, right, is this bad game is real bad. Like, that's real low, right? Like 2. Yeah. We've got that like worse than most of the other cards. So
you good to leave that one in 667?
Yeah, that's fine.
Led Astray. I've never played it. Limited. Not. I would definitely rather play Grievous Insult than Led Astray in just about any deck.
I think that's what it comes down to for me as well, and what normally ends up happening. And Grievous Insult very rarely makes it into any of my decks. Yeah. So.
We had a big conversation about the Hob versus Astray, that it's going to be situationally dependent on the rest of your deck, which one you would go for if you had both. So it's clearly in the ballpark of those ratings. I think the floor for this is lower for sure, because at least the Hob you can, like I'm saying, ultimately you're at least going to have your avatar.
Is the floor.
Always at least going to do something. Yeah. Whereas Led Astray could literally do nothing useful. Pretty much. Like, you can move them to no effect, basically, right? It doesn't help you in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, it's pretty rare that you won't be able to at least move them so they can't attack.
Well, not if they're on your side of the board. But yeah, something they just summoned.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you're going to be able to move them so that either they can't attack on the next turn or they can't block on the current turn. So it's pretty rare that and if it does nothing, it means they have nothing in play, which you probably...
No, or they have a bunch of stuff and it's all on your side of the board. And you don't have anything. You don't have anything, they have stuff, and it's all smacking your face.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're on death's door in that situation, which you probably are, it buys you one turn, right? Like, you move them all away from you and you step the other way and you potentially live one more turn.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, it's not often that it does literally nothing, but whether or not those things are good enough to even be worth
floor feels quite a bit. Yeah, feels lower than this, but the floor, the bad game feels worse, but...
Yeah, the floor is definitely worse.
But the good game probably could be similar or better. And
the good game for Led Astray is it actually just straight up wins games that Hob can't. Like by moving their avatar on death's door, things like that, away from all their blockers. Or moving their blockers away from being in like a line for stopping projectiles and things like that. So there's certainly potential like that, but I think it's whether it happens as much, I don't know. But maybe it's just the same rating as Hob.
Maybe
it's less. I don't know. I mean, the bad game's probably less. Yeah. Maybe the average games are the same.
Is it something like that?
I don't think it's better than Hob as like the good game, but they can just do sort of different things. I think that's fair. Actually, maybe the situation of it being in a good game is like above that 25%. Like maybe it's only 10% of games that it does the good thing. So maybe it should even be lower.
Yeah, maybe.
I could see 1, 2, 3 being fine.
Yeah, let's just go with it. But again, this is a card where the ratings do shift. Probably just depend, like they all do for the deck, right? But this is one that you would never want to play it, but in a very specific deck, maybe it's playable. And because those ratings get sucked up high enough.
No ways to actually get a good death door kill, it probably comes in. If you have Troll Bridge, it probably comes in.
Yeah.
Outside of those scenarios, I don't know, but
Shameless Squire.
Thinking about it, can you intercept the units when they're moving to you? Like, if you move their stuff onto one of your sites, can you intercept it? No, okay.
No, you can only intercept the basic move and attack ability.
Oh, the basic, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, I was just like, maybe that's a scenario where it actually gets a bit more value, but yeah, you can't even do that.
Shameless Squire.
I think basically everything you said about Reckless Squire is right there with it. I
know I'm happy to play this generally. I mean, one thing with the Squires, pretty much all of them, but you definitely can have, like, whilst you're happy to include them, they normally are that 24th slot just about when you include them still, despite everything we're saying.
Yeah, unless you don't have, like, any other tricks, then I'm normally pretty happy to just have them.
But you also wouldn't typically want, like, I don't know. I think I have played games where I've had 2 Squires in a deck, but you certainly wouldn't want, like, 4 of them or something either.
I've certainly had decks where I had 4 and it didn't feel great, but that was mostly just because I didn't have, like, a good creature base, so I just sort of had to have dudes.
But this ability, the Genesis thing, can be huge. You know, the tapping part of it can be huge. entirely independently, the dropping part of it can be huge. Just because, in particular, the Lance tokens, right? Like, basically, they're involved in every game, so the prospect of stealing a Lance token is a real thing in many games.
Yeah. The tap and make him drop is basically the same as Reckless Squire, like, suiciding into the Lance token, but better because you get to pick it up after combat, basically. So it's slightly better in that regard.
It's better if you have big minions yourself because you can basically remove their double or triple block, or whatever it is, and then pick something off.
That's where it really shines, is in the multiple blocker scenario.
I definitely think this is really good. I don't know how it compares exactly.
I think I would rate it exactly the same as Reckless Squire. Like, they both have a little bit of nuance into how they are different, but I don't think it's, like, anywhere close to changing point values on them.
457 is what we said, so I did that.
Yeah.
Shellycoat is...
I think this card's incredible.
Yeah.
I value this card super highly. It basically beats everything on 2. So... I think it's great. And you can sort of set up like the site placements where you only have one site they can attack into because you play across the back and just have like the one up front. So it buys a lot of time. Even if you just submerge it, that all of a sudden they just can't attack anymore. Or if you're on the play, they have to play their 2-drop into the back line and then it just can't attack. So it's just a very, very good card. It's great in double block scenarios because it quite often they can't kill both of them. Like, you know, if Shellycoat and a family block of brown bears, they only get to kill one. Like, there's just so many times where this card, it just is great.
Yeah,
it's great against
Robins.
It's
awkward to play around. Just generally a bit awkward, right? Like, obviously, like Magic Missiles doesn't kill it. You can't, like, Robin, it's good against Robin. It's good against anything that does 1 damage, basically, because it doesn't do anything.
Yep.
The more you play it, and the more you play against it, because I don't think this is a card that's rated very highly generally by most people.
Oh, okay.
So I think, So I think that.
I think if Sly Fox didn't exist, it would be the best water card, ordinary.
Yep.
Like, it's Winlow Troop a run for its money. Like, Fox, Troop, and Shellycoat are definitely the 3 best water cards, but they curve out pretty nicely together.
Shellycoat, obviously, just if you got whatever Sword and Shield, it's, you know, potentially that can do antics with it as well. And like, there's just a lot of situations where that matters, that reducing that damage matters, and it just it's not a fringe ability. Like, it's not something that only does something, you know, once every 10 games or something like that. It's like relevant.
Yeah,
the majority.
Pretty
of games.
relevant every game, just about. Maybe not literally every single game, but a very high percentage of games it matters. Like, even if it didn't have Submerge, it would still be as good as what we're saying.
Yeah, but it also has Submerge. I mean, I'm not sure how often you would actually play it Submerged ever, but...
There's the games where it's just like, their board's got a bunch of 3-power minions, and then you can Submerge it and just get it down out of your hand, and then it just like comes up for a double block with something, or just becomes relevant later, so...
Where does this sit? Is it... Trying to work out.
I think it's almost Leprechaun tier.
Yeah.
I think it's Bad Game. Bad Game's definitely better than a Leprechaun.
Yeah. Is it just 7-7-7-7-7?
I don't think it's Good Game 7. I think it's Good Game is like... I don't know if it's as good as a Brown Bears, but it's certainly up there. I've certainly had games where it's run the game completely by itself.
Yeah.
And you really notice it anytime you have like 2 Shellycoats as well. Like, but maybe that's not like 25% of games. Maybe that's less. Like whereas Brown Bears is like all the time. Like a lot of the time, it's just in that good game 9. So yeah, maybe it is 8.
Is it 7, 8?
I mean, definitely better than Burning Hands.
Is it better than Robin?
You got Burning Hands at 8. Better than Lumbering Giant.
Where's Burning?
Better? Is it better than Robin? So I think it's definitely better than Viking in its best case scenario. So I don't think it can be an 8. Maybe it's a 9 and Brown Bears is a 10. Because basically we're comparing everything's good games to a Brown Bears, right?
Yeah. Well, it's hard because you also want to... Yeah, we are, and that's probably the best card, but then we also have to factor in that later on we will also be ranking unique cards. Which,
yeah.
When a lot of those are better than Brown Bears.
Maybe it's just a 9 as well, but it's like lower end of the 9 and Brown Bears is like a higher end of a 9.
Maybe. I don't know. Is it... I get what you're saying.
I don't know, I've had enough games where it wins the game by itself, like just straight up. So I think it's as good as a Brown Bears. But then Slyfox comes into the conversation, right? And
yeah. And is the average game 7?
Probably.
So we're basically saying that would put it as what, better than Ruffians, just because its bad game is better.
Way higher. Yep. If we've got Ruffians at 9, I think Shellycoat has to be at 9. By the way, I forgot we'd put them up at 9. It's certainly not.
You got anything more to say about this? Because this is probably going to be the most hotly contentious thing we've said so far. But maybe the answer is just play with it more. If you're not sure,
I think so. It's definitely one of those cards that the more you play with it, the more you realize how it just completely runs the whole early game. And yeah, I think the early game is very important in AL because it's a pretty quick set overall.
And maybe its bad game is a bit long because it is probably pretty bad. Just maybe it isn't that great.
I think the fact that it has Submerge brings its bad game up a bit.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if it's just sitting under, they're not doing anything.
The worst case scenario is if all of their minions are 3 power.
Yeah.
In that scenario, it basically...
Yeah, and they're smacking your face.
Is the same as other 2 drops.
What's that?
Well, in that scenario, it's basically the same as having any other 2 drop. That's just 2 power. Because they just team up.
Yeah, but a lot of those we've given 4s and 5s to.
Yeah.
So.
But I do think it's... So basically my theory for a 7 is its bad game is better than a Leprechaun's bad game.
Well, we're literally saying that its bad game is better than everything in the set, except for a Brown Bears. Every ordinary we've rated so far. I'm not sure that's true.
Well, I think Slyfox is going to be...
Well, so far. But I don't think that's... Like... I mean, maybe... I think I can't see how it's like on the bad end of the scale. It's better than Robin.
Yeah.
I think it might be 6, 7, 9.
Maybe.
It's
Robin needs to be a 7.
Maybe. And again, it's still ultimately only like the thing is that anything that's really cheap, it does have the downside that if there's always going to be a chance that you just don't draw it at the start of the game, right? Like you draw it in the later part of the game, and anything that costs 1 or 2 or whatever, that part of the game is inherently just rarely going to be that great, pretty much, right? So
yeah, which is why I think Robin might need to be higher, right? Because it still is a pretty good trick later, right? Like we were saying how good it is even when it's not at the start of the game. So maybe that's too low.
Maybe.
Or either that or everything else needs to come down. Well, all the other cheap cards, I should say.
Yeah. Well, we don't have... I mean, most of them are... Okay, so what do we got? 5... I mean, most of them are already pretty down. Which one are you thinking about when you say that?
Don't know. I mean, like, basically, what I'm saying is Shellycoat is like miles better than Lake Afnak, right? So, and that's a 667. Like, I think the average game for a Shellycoat is going to be way more than 1 point different to the Lakey Boy. But maybe the fact that it's like 7 and 9 versus 6 and 7 is enough. I suppose.
Well, again, I think if you get,
I'm not sure.
If you, in the late game, thing is like I know what you're saying, but you're conceptualizing all of this through the lens that you have it at the start of the game. But if you draw this on turn 15 or whatever, it's not as good as Lake Afang. It just isn't. If you have like 9 mana on the board and the cost of everything doesn't matter, like it's just not as good. They both have Submerge. Like clearly, it's better if it's got 3 power and lethal.
Shellycoat's way better against missiles. Shellycoat's better against all the removal, though, right? Except for Joust and Jewel.
Shellycoat's better against all the removal. I don't know. Is it?
Like it just doesn't matter all the removal except for Jewel and Joust.
I don't know what removal are you talking about other than magic missiles.
Missiles, Burning Hands, everything
Lake
that's on this
Afang
list.
doesn't die to Burning Hands either. The only thing
Shellycoat doesn't team up with something small and die with a Burning Hands, whereas the Lakey Boy does. Like, you can't trade unless you step up and get in the 2 damage. Like, Shellycoat lives through Burning Hands plus a 2 power minion better than Lake Boy does. Because it forces them to move as well, or have the mortal to do the full 2 damage.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, Lake Afang also just answers whatever, right? Fomorians or whatever. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
I don't know. I know what you're saying, but also just...
Yeah.
This actually just kills big stuff, whereas you're talking about surviving through spells or whatever, but also at that point in the game, typically nobody may have any spells, right? So it's just... I don't know. It's situational.
Yeah, but I mean, so the bad game for...
As the ratings stand, it's way high. Like, it's also way higher than that is anyway, right? It's 679 instead of 667.
Yeah, which I did say, and I said might be okay, but...
I think the only thing I'm questioning here is if this, like, I don't know. I just wonder if the bad game, it's... You know, the bad game is where you're not ahead on tempo and you're not able to do all the things you're talking about, and it's just, and you basically just play it submerged and can't do anything with it, or it just dies.
Maybe, but so the thing is, even in the bad game scenario where you play it late, is the way that it double blocks. Like the way that it teams up for double blocks generally results in you only losing 1 minion. So even the bad game scenario of it being played late, unless it's just played by itself and you've drawn a 2-drop, like very late into the game, you have nothing else, which every 2-drop at that point is, by that metric, would be way down on the bad game. It's still got quite a good, like, bad game floor.
Alright, well, we'll just leave it. If you're that sure on it.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be the most contentious thing out of everything on here. But let's move on. Sly Fox is...
10-10-10.
It's really good. I mean, definitely like similar to the Robin, right? Like if you could have water as the 3rd or the 4th element, you could know that maybe you can't play it on curve, maybe you can't even... You know, maybe it doesn't hit the table until turn 5 or something, and even then, it's not terrible. Still fine.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's the game where you just play it on turn 1, and it's like it's this ticking clock, and there are plenty of decks that just have no answer, literally, right? Like, there's a percentage chance they have no answer. They cannot kill it. There's not even a card in their deck that can kill it.
This card has warped our draft meta in our locals quite badly. Like, when we first started drafting, there was just a lot of games that were just single-handedly won by Sly Fox getting in for 10 plus damage over the course of a game and then killing someone on death's door. And it's like, well, I guess every deck needs ways to deal with Flox. And then Robin shot up in value. So did Burning Hands, which was already reasonably high. But yeah, and now it's like you don't really get the decks anymore with 3 or 4 Foxes in it because everybody knows to take him pretty highly. So yeah, I think it is. It's probably the best water card, arguably the best ordinary.
I mean, in our local meta, it isn't. Brown Bears is better in our local meta just because of what you're describing. Because
we've warped in such a way that it's played around.
That you just can't really collect them in multiples, and you can't really, and everyone's going to have a way to kill them, basically.
Yep.
Where they really shine is where they just can't be killed. Yeah, and Sword and Shield. But that's another card that is in our local meta. Basically, people are first picking that as well.
Yep.
So you can't really... the idea that you're going to end up with 3 or 4 Sly Foxes and a Sword and Shield being past you or something is never going to happen in our local meta. So, and plus, what we're saying, if Robins, basically everybody who drafts them will play them. I don't know. They're still amazing. It's a hard one for us to rate though, just because it's warped our local draft meta so much, or limited meta, that it's very.
I mean, maybe the fact that it warped everything so hard means that it should be rated higher, right?
It should be for sure. Yeah, I mean, it should be. It's just I'm not sure.
The argument. So if Bears is 889, it's got to be what 689, 679, because its bad game is potentially game losing because they played it you played an early Fox, they played an early Robin, and they just get a massive advantage that way and just steamroll the game.
Does that happen?
Snowball the game, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's.
So the bad game is obviously worse, but its good game is it literally single-handedly wins the game over a very long game. So that's a pretty good upside. Whereas the average game is it probably...
It's clearly at least 9. I don't know if it can be 10. It obviously can single-hand, but that's not the 25th best game out of 100, right?
No, not at all. That's why That's why I wasn't arguing for a 10. I'm just saying that's its best case scenario. So I think the floor is probably 5 or a 6, because it's even mid to late game, it's still pretty good if they can't answer it.
Yeah.
Is it 6? But maybe it needs to go down a bit, just because if you hit it early and they do answer it early with one of the free ways to deal with it, it's so crippling. And potentially a lose condition. Because you warped your draft around Fox and then it just got dealt with easy. So maybe that brings the floor down a bit, but maybe that's not in the 25%. Maybe that's in the lower. So maybe it doesn't.
I mean, it doesn't feel like it's lower than 6 for that. I mean, even if they killed it with a Burning Hands or something you're fine with that anyways, right? It's just more if they get to kill it for free.
It's more if it was the only thing it was killing, sure, but realistically, it's probably not going to be. They're probably just going to take a few damage from it until they set up for a decent Burning Hands angle and get it for free while doing damage to other stuff. Because it's not a fast clock, but it is a clock that needs to be respected.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the other 5. It definitely can't be... its worst game is definitely better than... whatever, it's definitely better than... Even as a late game blocker, that it's still great because they can't get rid of it easily. It will get the block, right? It will get the chump block, their big thing.
Yeah.
Because it's got stealth, right? So even through that lens, as a late game, turn 10 or whatever, it's still probably better than the families and stuff, right? At that point.
Possibly. Outside of the scenarios where you needed that extra power to actually trade with a double block or a triple block. But in general, it's going to be better than them, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's not so much... Like, the bad game for this isn't so much drawing it late, because it's always going to have value late. The bad game is when you, like, warp your draft around it and then lose it for free to Robins and Burning Hands and things like that.
Sure, but I mean... yeah, okay. That's a bit too...
But as I was saying before, right, I think that is below the 25% mark, so it doesn't actually...
Yeah, like, and that's where we discuss when we're drafting anyway. Like, if you start to warp the draft around it, now you're saying, look, like, the Foxes... The bad game. What happens once you start to warp it, right? Like, they're bad. The bad game becomes worse, but the average and the good game becomes better, right? Pretty much. So,
yeah, which is why I was like considering earlier maybe it needs to come down. But I think taking into consideration the 25% mark, it doesn't actually bring it down.
And then it's just, is this 7 or 8? This one in the middle. It's average game. Average, I don't know. They're pretty good. Like,
yeah, they're pretty good. Maybe it's an 8.
I think it's an 8. Like,
because the only time they're bad is when they just die for free, right? Outside of that, they're always running the show.
Yeah, I'm okay to put them a little bit higher than the Robin, and the only reason why, like, part of the reason why the Robin is rated so highly is precisely because of the Fox. So, yeah. I mean, that puts them as, like we're saying, like before we rated it, we were saying, is it the best ordinary? We were effectively saying that, right? And then the answer is, according to what we've rated so far, it's the second best ordinary after Brown Bears, and I think that's true.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not by heaps either.
No, there's a lot that is close, like Leprechaun.
Yeah. It's sort of like a group right Robin up there, right?
It's Shellycoat. They're all very... We're saying they're all very similar.
Yep.
I think that's right.
Yeah. I think the next card we're about to talk about is almost in that group. It's like honorable mention for that group, but it's like just outside of it, I think. I think this card's very good. But...
yeah, I mean, I know I played a couple of times, including last draft we did, that... Oh no, it wasn't the last one. It was the one before, where it obviously... It doesn't feel good. Like, it's not good at all when it's your only minion kind of thing. Like,
I think it's not even bad in that scenario, right? Because it's a 3 cost 3 power when, like, you just jam it.
Yeah,
and like,
it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just not great, right? Like, obviously, part of the reason why this is so good is because you're giving something stealth. Like, that's definitely pretty good.
But the reason why I think it's so strong and an honorable mention for that group is because when it's bad and doesn't give anything stealth, it's still like a solid card that would be pretty highly rated anyway, just because it's cost power. Like, it's cost power with no drawback. The fact that it's double water is obviously a concern, but the fact that it's double water, and if you play it late game, you're probably going to have another minion to give it stealth at that point. So then you're sort of trading off the threshold for the ability, and that's alright.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's obviously got to be lower than Ruffians, just because it needs like something else around. But maybe giving something... Because there's some things you can give stealth in the set that you never need to make them lose stealth, and they get like a lot of value and just like do a lot. Or like, you know, wait until certain turns and stuff. So, the stealth can come in with some pretty high value. But yeah, it's obviously not a consistent ability. Because some games that will do nothing, other games that will completely be bonkers, and other games that will just be straight up mid. So,
I mean, without having gone through this exercise as we have done now, if you had I would be umming and ahhing over which is better between this and the Ruffians, for example, right?
Yeah.
I would feel like they were pretty close.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close.
You had a trashy first pack and it was first pick and they were the best 2 options. You would be basing that choice on what you're passing, effectively, right? Probably.
Yeah.
They'd be so close. Or your
element preference, realistically. Yeah. But yeah, definitely on what you're passing. Like, you know, if it was... Because some packs you get, they're like 2 elements of just all cards, and you're like, all right, well, this doesn't really change it at all. But if you're taking the troop and passing no water cards, that's a pretty good reason to take troop. Whereas if you're you're potentially passing like 3 or 4 fire cards, so in that scenario, yeah, definitely troop over the other one. But I think that's probably what it comes down to as to which one you would want to take.
It feels like the bad game must be pretty similar, right? Like the bad game is that bottom 25 or whatever. You're either not giving stealth to anything, or what you're giving the stealth to isn't relevant for whatever reason.
I think the bad game is more realistically not being able to cast it on 3. Because the bad game, because if you just jam it on 3 and don't give anything stealth, I think you're happy with it either way, and I don't think that's bad. Whereas, the bad game, the later you cast this, it has a higher floor than Ruffians, right? Because it doesn't need to snowball from the early game.
Yeah.
So maybe
it is, 6 maybe.
Maybe
the bad game, yeah. It's hard to, I think that's fair.
I think the bad game is a bit better, but the good game is a bit worse.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fair. And I think the average games for both of them are roughly the same.
Is it 6, 7, 8?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, which puts it really good, right? But just not as good as the Shellycoat or the Fox.
Yep. And it's still better than Lakey Boy, right? Was that 6, 6, 7? Because I think it is better than him.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was quite a bit better really.
Yeah.
Thieving Magpie... is just it's probably better than it's probably better than the Green Sparrow, right?
Maybe not.
Just because of the Lance tokens are really relevant, right?
Being able to just move in and steal their Lance token.
So I'm not saying it's good, by the way. I'm just saying I think it's better than Green Sparrow. I think I would rather play this than a Green Sparrow.
I know I've played Green Sparrow and I haven't played Magpie. Sorry. I mean, the biggest thing you want to pick up with it is if somebody happened to have a Ring of Morrigan, but that is never going to happen.
No, well, it's going to ping him to death probably right before he can jump in. But the Lance tokens is really significant, right? Because they're kind of just everywhere. So,
but there's realistically, it's got to be in play. It's got to be able to move to where the Lance token is. So they're probably just going to set up where that's never going to happen. But maybe
but that's good anyway, right?
Maybe that forces them into a position where you get the trade. So
the question, is it 2, 3, 4?
I don't think it actually gets put in a deck.
Probably not. But Green Sparrow was 2, 3, 3. So
was it?
Yeah,
that seems a bit higher. Does it?
I don't know. Maybe it's hard to say. I mean, 2, 3, 3 it probably doesn't get put in a deck. That's the thing. That's the reality, right? It almost certainly isn't going in a deck if it's 2, 3, 3.
Well, I mean, its good game is better than Green Sparrow, right?
I think so, yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's 2, 3, 4. That seems alright to me.
Yeah, I guess. I was thinking 2, 2, 4, and maybe Green Sparrow should be 2, 2, 3. Because I don't think the average game of Green Sparrow is much better than its bad game.
What do you want, 2, 2, 4?
Yeah, I think so.
So we'll wrap this episode up here. Please leave a comment if you have any questions or you'd like to request for us to cover something specific in a future episode. The next episode, it's going to be looking at the Air Ordinary cards, and that should be released in a few days' time. So until then, keep safe, keep well, and keep enjoying your sorcery. Cheers.